My girlfriend went to her friends who invited 5 strippers. What happened next? I'll tell you now. I've never been good at trusting people. Not because I'm bitter. Not because I think the world owes me anything. It's just that I learned early, painfully early, that people leave. They promise they won't. Swear they care. Look you in the eyes and say all the right words. And then one day, they're gone. Just like that. A closed door. A goodbye that sounds more like an excuse. I grew up in a group home. One of those gray, forgotten buildings where the walls feel cold no matter how many coats of paint they add. Some of the staff were kind. Most were just tired. No one was cruel, but no one stayed either. People rotated like clock hands. Some smiled. Some didn't. You learn quickly not to get attached. You learn not to trust smiles, not to believe in warmth, not to count on anyone. And so I didn't, not even when I got out. Not when I got a job, a little apartment, a better jacket than the ones donated in bulk every winter. I learned how to live on my own, how to be polite but distant, how to smile just enough to pass through the world without raising alarms, how to say, I'm good, thanks, even when I wasn't sure what good felt like. I told myself I didn't need anyone until I met her. Her name was Lila. She wasn't loud, but she had that kind of voice that made other conversations quiet down when she spoke. Sharp eyes, disarming smile, a way of leaning just slightly forward when she talked, like everything you said mattered. I met her through a friend of a co-worker at a small dinner party I didn't want to attend. I remember thinking I'd stay 20 minutes, eat something, leave without saying goodbye. But then she sat next to me, and I stayed 3 hours. She asked questions no one ever did. Not about where I worked or what I liked to do on weekends. Real questions. Ones that made my stomach knot. Do you believe people can change? What do you think happens when trust is broken for the last time? I deflected. At first. That's what I did. But she didn't push. She didn't flirt or pry or act like she deserved answers just because she smiled. She just waited, and that made me curious. We started talking, slowly, texting, then coffee, then short walks after work. I kept things distant, physically and emotionally. I didn't let her touch my arm when she laughed. I avoided eye contact when conversations got too real. She never commented, never called me out, but I knew she noticed. I told her I had some issues with closeness. That was an understatement. What I meant was, I don't know how to let someone matter without imagining how they'll eventually hurt me. But she just nodded and said, okay. No judgment. Just okay. 2 months passed. She never pushed. She was patient in a way I wasn't used to. Most people, after a few weeks of polite emotional distance, moved on, lost interest, labeled me cold or closed off, and wandered off to someone easier. Lila didn't. She stayed. Even when I canceled last minute. Even when I didn't answer her for a full day. Even when I told her outright, I'm not someone who trusts easily. It's not you. It's the world I came from. She looked at me, really looked, and said, then I guess I'll just have to earn it. It scared the hell out of me. But I let her in, little by little. I told her about the group home, the cold dinners, the way I used to hoard socks because I was afraid the donations would stop. I told her about the night I turned 15 and realized no one was coming to visit me. No birthday cake, no card, no family. And when I told her those things, the things I had never said aloud, she didn't flinch. She didn't tell me I was strong. She didn't pity me. She just held my hand and said, thank you for trusting me with that. That was the night I kissed her for the first time. And for the first time in my life, I thought, maybe I can let someone stay. The weeks that followed were good. Better than good. We took a weekend trip to the coast. Walked along the water barefoot. Ate grilled fish at a roadside shack while it rained outside. She curled up next to me at night and said things like, I feel safe with you. And I believed her because I felt safe too. Not just physically, emotionally. She made me believe that maybe trust wasn't a liability. That maybe letting someone in didn't have to end in loss. So when she asked if she could spend a night out with her girlfriends, drinks, dancing, the usual. I didn't hesitate. She asked gently, almost like she expected me to say no, like she knew how fragile I still was. But I told her, "You don't have to ask permission. I trust you." Her face softened like she wasn't expecting that. She kissed me on the forehead and said, "I won't let you down." I remember smiling after she left. That smile was the last real one I had for a while. The night she left, the apartment felt unusually quiet. Not lonely, just still, like the air had taken a deep breath, and was waiting to see what would happen next. I sat on the couch for a while with the TV on, volume low. Some old movie, nothing I was really watching. I kept thinking about how she smiled when I told her I trusted her. The way her eyes softened, her lips pressed into my forehead, like it meant something. It did mean something. To me, it meant everything. I didn't grow up hearing those words. I trust you, and I rarely said them. Not because I thought everyone was out to get me, but because I'd learned how much it costs to give someone that power. It's like handing them the only fragile thing you own, and hoping they don't drop it. And I gave it to her, willingly, because for the first time, I truly believed she wouldn't hurt me. The hours passed. I cleaned the kitchen, scrolled on my phone, answered a few work emails even though it was a weekend. I didn't check up on her. Didn't text "how's it going?" or "let me know when you get there." Not because I wasn't thinking about her, but because I did want to be that guy, the paranoid boyfriend, the one who asked for proof. She deserved better than that, so I gave her space. At midnight, I went to bed. Her side of the bed still smelled like her shampoo. I woke up around 9 a.m. to the sound of the door unlocking. She came in quietly, closed it gently behind her. I sat up. "Hey!" She looked up like she didn't expect me to be awake. Her eyes were tired. She smiled quickly, too quickly, and walked toward the bedroom. "You all right?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, kicking off her shoes. "Just tired. We drank a little too much." She dropped her bag on the chair and peeled off her jacket. We ended up staying at Casey's place. I crashed on the couch. "God, my head." I nodded. "You want coffee?" "No. Sleep first, then coffee." She leaned over, kissed my cheek, and disappeared into the bathroom. A few minutes later, I heard the shower. Then silence. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while. I don't know why I felt it. That shift, she hadn't done anything wrong. Not really, but something felt off. It wasn't the story. It was the way she told it. Too controlled, too smooth. Her eyes didn't meet mine long. Her hands moved too much. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was me. Still healing, still overthinking. I told myself that, over and over. And still something didn't sit right. She came out of the shower in an oversized hoodie, her hair damp, crawled into bed, curled up, and pulled the blanket over her head. "I feel like a brick," she mumbled. "Rest," I said softly. "I'll be here." She didn't answer. Soon her breathing deepened. I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and stared at her phone sitting on the counter. It buzzed once, then stopped. Just a notification. I looked away. I never checked her phone. Not once. Not in all the months we'd been together. I didn't want to be that man, the one who goes looking for something and finds it simply because he looked too hard. I believed in privacy, boundaries, mutual respect. But still, the way she smiled this morning, it hadn't been real. It had been rehearsed. I walked over and picked it up. My hands didn't shake. I told myself I'd only look at messages from last night, just to quiet the storm in my head. I opened her gallery first. Sometimes photos say more than text. There was a video, most recent, 35 seconds long. I tapped it. The screen went black for half a second. Then motion, laughter, high-pitched, loud. Lila's voice, unmistakable. "Wait, what is this?" Another voice, one I didn't recognize. "Surprise!" Then the camera shifted. 5 men, shirtless, oiled, flexing. Music started. Heavy bass, electronic rhythm, cheering. Someone, maybe Casey, screamed, "We got you the deluxe package, bitch." Lila laughed loud and slurred. Oh my God, what? The phone jerked as someone handed it to another girl. And then dancing, clothes, grinding, and Lila, drunk, laughing, staggering, touching them, letting them touch her. My stomach turned. I paused the video, backed out, closed the phone. I sat back down, placed it face down on the table, and stared at the wall. I had no words, no anger yet, just disbelief, shock. So dense it hadn't registered as pain yet. The woman I trusted, the woman who held my hand when I told her I was broken, had spent the night with strangers pressed up against her, laughing, smiling, and letting it all happen. I walked into the bedroom. She was asleep, wrapped in the blanket, breathing softly, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just cracked the one thing I had built carefully, painfully, piece by piece. Trust, and all I could think was, I let you in. I gave you everything, and you gave it to them. There are no screams in real betrayal, no broken plates, no shouting matches, just silence, thick and slow like honey in your lungs. That morning, I sat at the edge of the bed and watched her sleep. Her hair clung to her forehead, her arms wrapped tightly around a pillow, as if she needed something to hold. Her face was soft, peaceful, almost childlike, and all I could think was, that's not the face I saw in the video. I replayed the sound of her laugh in my head, not the one I'd grown to love. The other one, louder, sloppier, emptier. The one that echoed between sweaty bodies and bass-thumping music. The one that followed five strangers walking into a room like a gift-wrapped circus act. Surprise! She hadn't been shocked. She hadn't run. She had laughed. Opened her arms. Let the chaos in. I had given her peace. She had chosen noise. For a while, I just sat there. The apartment was quiet. My coffee had gone cold in the next room. Outside, the city moved as if nothing had changed. But something had. Something big. And it wasn't her. It was me. Because when you grow up the way I did, surrounded by broken promises and revolving doors, trust doesn't come naturally. It's earned in inches. It's guarded like oxygen. And when you give it, it costs you. I hadn't trusted anyone in years. She knew that. I told her everything. Not just the facts, but the feeling. How hard it was for me. How rare. How sacred. And she looked me in the eye and said, "You're safe with me." She meant it when she said it. I believe that. But that's the thing about people like her. They don't lie with malice. They lie with need. And that's worse. Because they convince themselves they're still good even as they destroy what they were trusted to protect. She stirred. Opened her eyes slowly. "Hey," she whispered, voice raspy. "What time is it?" "Almost 11, I said, barely above a whisper. She stretched, yawned, blinked at the sunlight. "God, my head," she mumbled. "What a night." "Yeah," I said. That one word carried everything I wasn't ready to say. She didn't notice. She sat up, pulled the blanket around her. I think I'm still half drunk. I didn't respond. She finally looked at me. Something in my face made her pause. "Are you okay?" I nodded. Lie. She got up and went to the kitchen. I followed a minute later. She was pouring water, moving slowly. Still in the hoodie, bare legs, hair in a loose bun. She looked over her shoulder. "You're quiet." I didn't sleep much. "Why?" I picked up her phone from the table and handed it to her. "I think you should check your recent videos." She frowned, unlocked it, and began to scroll. I watched her expression morph. Confusion, then recognition, then something deeper. Her mouth opened slightly. Her eyes widened. She stopped the video halfway through. "Oh my God!" I didn't speak. She set the phone down, covered her mouth. I don't remember this." Her voice was small. "That's convenient," I said. She stepped closer. "No, seriously. I was so drunk, I barely." "I noticed." I interrupted. "You could barely stand. That didn't stop you." She flinched. "I didn't sleep with them," she whispered. I stared at her. Hard. "You sure?" She hesitated. And that hesitation was the real answer. She began crying. Quietly at first, then shaking. I didn't plan this. It was Casey's idea. I didn't know. You stayed, I said. You didn't leave. You danced. You touched them. You let it happen. Tears streamed down her face. I thought you trusted me, she said through sobs. I did. I looked her in the eye. And that's what hurts. She dropped to the chair, head in her hands. I stood still, not angry, not sad, just numb. This wasn't just about sex, I said. This was about safety, about knowing I could believe someone when they said they wouldn't hurt me. She looked up, eyes red. It didn't mean anything. It meant something to me. I snapped, You made a choice, drunk or not, and now I get to make mine. She froze. What does that mean? It means I need air. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, not slamming the door, not yelling, just closing it. Behind me, silence. Inside me, noise. Because now I knew something I had hoped I'd never have to confirm. People always leave. Sometimes they just do it while still holding your hand. I didn't go far. Just walked a few blocks, past the cafe we used to sit at, down the quiet back streets where we once held hands like it meant something. The city was awake but gentle, the way it only is on late Sunday mornings. People laughed behind windows, walked dogs, read papers in corners of parks. None of them knew that a man was walking among them with trust freshly torn from his chest. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't even rage. It was worse than that. It was confirmation. Confirmation that I had been right all along. That trust is a lie people tell you, so they can feel good about how easy they break it. I sat down on a bench under a tree and stared at nothing. I tried to replay the last few weeks like a tape. I could rewind and pause and study for signs. I wanted to believe this was just one bad night, one mistake. But it wasn't. It was a pattern I ignored because I wanted to believe. The hesitation when I'd ask small questions. The deflections. The moments she seemed too careful with her words. The way she always said, I'd never hurt you, like it was a script, not a promise. She knew. She knew what I'd been through. She knew I grew up in a place where people left without warning. She knew that trusting me wasn't casual. It was sacred. And she used it anyway. Not maliciously. Just carelessly. And somehow that made it worse. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos. Us at the lake. Her in that blue sweater she stole from me. Our first trip, where she looked at me across the table like I was the only person in the world. Was any of it real? Or was I just another chapter in a story she liked to tell herself? The one where she could be good for someone for a while before sabotaging it? I closed the gallery and opened my notes app, typed one sentence. She knew what trust meant, and she broke it anyway. Then I locked my phone and stared at the sidewalk like it owed me an answer. By the time I got back to the apartment, she was gone. Not all the way, just out. Her coat was missing, her shoes, her phone charger. But her bag was still there, and so was the weight in the air. I sat on the edge of the bed and let it settle. That stillness again. But this time, it wasn't quiet. It was full of noise I couldn't hear, but fell in my bones. Memories now poisoned. Her laugh in the kitchen, replayed like a loop that wouldn't stop. Her hands on my shoulders as I told her things I'd never said aloud. Her eyes that looked like they were listening. And maybe they were. But listening doesn't mean caring. She came back around 5. I heard the key in the lock. The hesitation before the door opened. She stepped in like a ghost. Slow, unsure, eyes scanning the space like it might collapse around her. We didn't speak at first. She walked toward me, stopped a few feet away. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Then don't. She nodded, looked down. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you knew you could. That landed. She looked at me, glassy-eyed. I thought I could keep it separate. I thought I could drink, blow off steam, come home, and you'd never. No. I finished. You thought I'd never know. And that made it okay. She didn't answer. She couldn't. I stood up. I don't need you to explain it. Her voice cracked. But I want to. I don't. She stepped closer. You told me once that trust for you was life or death. I remember. And you gave it to me. Yeah. Her lip trembled. And now it's dead? I looked her in the eye. Long, steady. No, I said. Now I know you never held it like it was alive. She broke then, cried into her hands, collapsed into a chair. I didn't move to comfort her, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I finally understood the person I needed her to be never existed. She played the part, beautifully, but the real her, the one who let 5 strangers into a room and laughed through it, that was the truth. And I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. She looked up through tears. Are you going to leave me? I shook my head. No. She blinked. Hope flickered in her chest. I already did. Leaving her wasn't a decision I made in one moment. It wasn't a slam of the door or a suitcase by the bed or a dramatic walkout with her crying on the floor. It was quieter than that. Colder. Cleaner. It was a decision to disappear from her world like I was never really there. To walk out of the house, out of her story, out of the version of myself that thought she was different. I didn't pack much. Just the essentials. My laptop, a few clothes, my toothbrush, the book she gave me that I never finished. She wasn't home when I left. I don't know where she went. Maybe to cry in a friend's kitchen. Maybe to rewrite the story for someone new. Someone easier. Someone who hadn't seen her dance while drunk and laugh at the destruction she didn't think anyone would notice. I didn't care. Not anymore. I locked the door behind me without looking back. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I knew looking would make it worse. That apartment had been a space where I'd felt safe for the first time in years. I'd let my guard down inside those walls. Let someone in. Let my past breathe. And now every surface felt contaminated. Every couch cushion, every lamp, every towel we shared, marked by the lies she let grow while smiling at me. I found a short-term rental across town. 1 room, 2 quiet. It suited me. I didn't tell anyone where I went. No posts, no explanations, no shared grief. Grief, I learned, is sacred. Not everything needs to be broadcast. Some things deserve to die in silence. The first few nights were strange. I expected tears, panic, regret, but what I felt most was stillness. I slept, not well, but I slept, and I didn't check her page, didn't stalk her updates, didn't wonder what she was telling people, because the truth didn't need my defense. It stood on its own. She messaged me on the 3rd day, a single sentence. Can we talk? I left it on read, not to hurt her, but because there was nothing left to say. On the 5th day, she tried again. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just honesty. I opened a blank note and typed, "You had it, and you didn't respect it." Then I closed the note and never replied. I didn't want revenge, didn't want to expose her, didn't want to make her feel the way I did. Empty, split, silenced. I just wanted to disappear from her memory like a clean cut, because I realized something. She didn't deserve to keep even the pain of me. People talk about healing like it's loud, like it comes with breakthroughs and emotional fireworks. But mine was quiet. It came in the form of not reacting, not sending that final text, not asking why, not making her understand. It came in choosing myself in silence, in walking away before she could see what she'd broken. One night, I walked past a restaurant we'd once sat in. Our spot, the table by the window. I stopped across the street and looked at it. There were new people there now, laughing, eating. The world had moved on, and so had I. Not completely, but enough. Enough to know I wouldn't sit at that table again and pretend I was the same man she betrayed, because that man no longer existed. I didn't lose her. She lost me, and the worst part for her, she'd never get the chance to explain herself, not to the version of me who listened, because that version was gone. And the man I became, he doesn't look back. The first full week without her passed like a strange dream. Nothing dramatic happened. No storm. No sleepless breakdowns. No dramatic messages at midnight. Just silence. And in that silence, something unexpected took shape. Space. Space in my head. Space in my chest. Space where her voice used to echo, now replaced by the sound of breathing that belonged only to me. Every morning, I woke up alone in that small rental apartment. I half expected to feel regret. That pit in the stomach. That whisper. What if you'd stayed? What if she'd changed? But it never came, because I hadn't just left her. I'd left a version of myself that needed her. She messaged again on the 8th day. I know I hurt you. I just want to hear your voice one more time. I read it in silence, stared at it, imagined her typing it, maybe on her bed, maybe with trembling hands, maybe with that rehearsed sadness she used so well. Then I deleted it, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that caring doesn't mean returning to the fire. One afternoon, I passed by a bookstore. I went in, bought a novel I'd heard about, but never made time for, sat in a quiet corner of the cafe, and read for 2 hours straight. No one texted me. No one asked where I was. And for the first time in what felt like years, that didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like freedom. Sometimes, the people who destroy you aren't monsters. They're soft. They laugh with you. They make you coffee. They say they love you while holding a match behind their back. And the worst part? You still remember the good parts. You still miss the warmth. Even when you know the fire wasn't meant to keep you safe. It was meant to distract you while everything around you burned. She posted a photo on day 10. Not of herself. Just a book. A sunset. A quote about growing from mistakes. I didn't like it. Didn't zoom in. Didn't wonder who took the picture. Because by then I knew, whatever she was mourning, it wasn't me. It was the version of herself she'd lost when I didn't give her the ending she expected. I wasn't angry anymore. Not even numb. Just clear. Like I'd rinsed my soul under cold water and finally opened my eyes. I changed my number. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. Because healing isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about deciding who gets access to the new version of you. That night, I sat at the window with a notebook and wrote. She broke the most fragile part of me. But in doing so, she exposed what needed rebuilding. I gave her trust. She gave me truth. And maybe that's exactly what I needed to finally move forward. This time, I don't need closure. I became it. I closed the notebook, put it on the shelf, and stared out at a city that no longer felt heavy, a world that no longer belonged to her. There's a strange kind of freedom in returning to places that used to hurt, not to revisit the pain, but to make sure it no longer owns you. On day 15, I walked back to our old street, not on purpose. I was out running errands, turning corners I didn't think twice about, when suddenly there it was, the tree-lined block, the bakery with the crooked sign, the cafe where we had our first "We're Serious Now" brunch, and finally the apartment, 3rd floor, 4th window from the left. Her window, our window, but not anymore. I stood across the street, hands in my pockets, feeling nothing and everything all at once. The curtains were drawn. The plants we used to water together were gone. It looked like someone else had already moved in. And in that moment, I realized something. She hadn't just lost me. She'd lost a version of herself she only got to be when I believed in her. And that version didn't live there anymore either. I stayed for 5 minutes. No longer. Didn't take a photo. Didn't text anyone. Just stood there quietly, letting the ghost of who I was fade into the pavement. Then I turned and walked away. One more thread cut. One more lock undone. Later that night, I opened the old shared drive we made months ago, filled with photos, travel plans, music playlists. She hadn't removed herself. Still floating in the digital world like nothing had happened. I clicked on one folder labeled Us. Inside, dozens of images, sunsets, road trips, her head on my shoulder, me laughing at something she said. I watched it all in silence, then selected everything, and hit delete, not in anger, not in grief, just because it didn't belong to the man I was becoming. The next morning, she sent one last message. I'm moving out next week, in case you wanted to know. I stared at it for a while, then typed, I already left, and hit send, not to hurt her, but to remind her this wasn't a shared story anymore. She'd be leaving a space I no longer occupied. A few nights later, I sat in a diner alone, ordered my usual, read a book between bites. The server asked if I was waiting for someone. I smiled and said, "No, just me tonight." And for once, that felt like a privilege, because loneliness is different from peace. And I was no longer lonely. I was simply alone by choice. Somewhere, she was probably rewriting the story, telling someone it wasn't what it looked like, that we grew apart, that I overreacted. And maybe that's a version she needed to survive. But I had mine, and mine was simple. I gave her my deepest wound, and she didn't hold it gently, so I took it back. And now I care it myself, carefully, quietly, stronger than ever. I used to think healing was about moving on. Now I think it's about moving inward, about clearing out the wreckage, sealing up the doors, and deciding, finally, fully, who gets a key. It had been 3 weeks. No contact. No more messages from her. No friends reaching out on her behalf. Just silence. The kind I used to fear. The kind that once felt like abandonment. But now, it felt like ownership. I got a new place. Small. Clean. Nothing shared. I bought everything myself. Each fork, each towel, each pillow. It felt ridiculous. How deeply I cared about not using anything from the old life. But it mattered, because nothing in this apartment reminded me of her. Or of us. It wasn't about starting over. It was about starting honest. I put a mirror up by the front door. Not for vanity. For proof. So I could look myself in the eye each time I left and returned, and remember, you got out. You didn't go back. You survived what you once thought would kill you. Sometimes, late at night, a part of me still reached for her. In memory, not in desire. Not the her that danced with strangers. The other one, the one that kissed my forehead and said, "I'll be good to you, I promise." But that version wasn't real. It was packaging. A well-lit trailer for a film that turned out to be horror. I didn't date. Didn't swipe. Didn't flirt. Didn't pretend. Not because I was closed, but because I was still repairing the lock. And I knew now, you don't hand out access just because someone knocks politely. One evening, I got an email from her old address. Not a message. Just a single shared link to a cloud folder titled, "I'm sorry." I didn't click it. Not because I was afraid of what it contained, but because I didn't need what was inside. No apology, no explanation, no emotional confession could do what silence already had. Set me free. I archived the email. Didn't delete it. Didn't respond. Just left it where it belonged, unread, untouched, uninvited. Like the version of her who once walked through my door. I began writing again. Not letters. Not to her. Just small things. Thoughts. Fragments. Truths. Like, you don't owe anyone access just because they used to hold your heart. Or, sometimes people don't break you maliciously. They just don't see the value in what you gave them until they realize it's gone. Or, you can't teach someone how to handle what they've never had to earn. I made peace with the fact that she would probably tell the story differently. Maybe in her version, she was confused, or overwhelmed, or lonely. Maybe in her version, I was cold, closed off, too damaged to love properly. And maybe to someone new, that story will sound convincing. That's fine, because her version of the story doesn't matter anymore. Not when I finally found my own. A story not built on fear. Not built on broken trust. Not built on giving everything to someone who never earned it. But one where I own my voice, my boundaries, my silence. No one gets in for free anymore. And those who try, they'll find the door closed. Not locked out of spite. But because I finally understand, I'm not something to be tried. I'm someone to be trusted. And trust? That's no longer something I give away hoping it'll be respected. It's something you prove you're worthy of. Healing doesn't look like what movies show. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. There's no moment of screaming in the rain or setting fire to a box of memories. Healing is more like this. Waking up and realizing you haven't thought about them in days. Passing a place that used to sting and feeling nothing. Reading their name and not flinching. I was walking home from the train when I saw her. Not up close, just across the street. She was stepping out of a cafe, phone in hand, sunglasses on, that familiar half-smile on her lips, the one she used to disarm people, to make them lean closer without realizing. She hadn't changed. Same way of brushing her hair behind her ear. Same stride. Same presence. But something in me had, because seeing her didn't hurt. It didn't bring anything back. It didn't unravel me. It just confirmed what I already suspected. She was now a person I used to know. She didn't see me. Or if she did, she didn't react. I watched her walk away, turn the corner, vanish into the crowd. I didn't follow. Didn't wonder where she was going. Didn't care who she was meeting. Because none of that belonged to me anymore. That night, I wrote one last note to myself. Not a letter. Not a message for her. Just a line I needed to say out loud. The most powerful thing you'll ever do is not respond. And that became my way of moving forward. No explanations. No revenge. No second chances. Just a silence. And in that silence, I rebuilt. I started showing up for myself. Small things first. Early mornings. Fresh coffee. Clean sheets. Long walks with no destination. Then bigger things. New projects. A journal. Reconnecting with friends I neglected while trying to hold together something broken. Eventually, the man who had been betrayed, he became a memory too. And in his place stood someone stronger. Someone who no longer asked why she did it. Someone who no longer replayed the video, or the message, or the morning after. Someone who stopped needing closure. Because he realized he was the closure. She would never know this version of me. The one who doesn't flinch. The one who doesn't wait for explanations. The one who learned how to love himself louder than the silence she left behind. Maybe someday she'll wonder. Maybe she'll think of me when a man looks at her the way I once did, with full trust, unguarded, whole. And maybe that man will see through her faster than I did. Or maybe not. But either way, it won't matter. Because the boy who gave her his deepest wound, he's gone. And in his place is someone she never earned. It's strange how quietly life starts over. Not with fireworks. Not with some new person filling the space she left. Just with mornings that don't feel heavy anymore. With moments where your reflection doesn't look like something broken. With laughter, real laughter, that sneaks up on you when you're not paying attention. I don't think about her much anymore. And when I do, it doesn't feel like a wound. It feels like something I survived, like the scar on my shoulder I stopped explaining. I never went back to our old photos. I never reopened the folder she sent labeled, "I'm sorry." Some things don't need answers. Some endings speak for themselves. People ask me sometimes if I'm ready to trust again, and I tell them the truth. I never stopped believing in trust. I just stopped giving it to people who didn't know what it costs. There was a time I thought what she did would break me forever, that I'd never open up again, that I'd always live on guard, behind walls too thick for anyone to reach through. But I was wrong, not because I found someone new, not because someone fixed me, but because I stopped seeing her choice as a reflection of my worth. She didn't betray me because I was too soft, too trusting, too open. She betrayed me because she didn't know how to hold something fragile without squeezing until it cracked. And that's not my failure. That's hers. What she did hurt. But it also showed me what I value, what I deserve, what I will never again ignore. I still believe in love. But now I believe in loving myself first, in guarding peace like treasure, in protecting the parts of me I used to give away too easily, and in understanding that not everyone who says, "I won't hurt you," is capable of keeping that promise. These days, my life is quieter, not empty, just intentional. I don't rush to let people in, but I don't lock the doors either. I just make sure they knock and wait, because the next time I give someone my trust, it won't be because they asked for it. It'll be because they showed me, with every word, every silence, every choice, that they know what it's worth. And if they don't, they won't get in. Not because I'm afraid, but because I finally know my heart isn't something to test. It's something to keep.